Okay, I'm going to use the reading in Canvas to fill these in, and we kind of just went through this together as a class. But one thing we noticed, and it talks about, is that cellular respiration and photosynthesis are complete opposite reactions, which is super interesting. So complete opposite reactions. So what cellular respiration needs, photosynthesis produces. What photosynthesis needs, cellular respiration produces. So they're complete opposite. And cellular respiration is the process of releasing energy from food. So when we eat and we break down our food into glucose, our cells don't use glucose, and so it would be something that we actually need to refine as we go through there. So that energy we get from our food that our cells need to live on is something called ATP. So in the process of cellular respiration, then we're going to break down our food or glucose, and we're going to make a form of energy called ATP, and that's really what your cells live on. And so if we don't have oxygen, we don't get the energy from our food and our cells start dying, which, by the way, is also why we do CPR. So animals, why do we need to go through cellular respiration? Is to get our energy. And we talked about that we can't go through photosynthesis, so we need cellular respiration to get the energy to live. All right, and then if you look at part 2, carbon cycling, plants and animals rely on each other. And so if this is an aquarium, and here's our word bank, we can go ahead and we know that this plant is going to take in solar energy or light energy. We know that it's also going to take in CO2 or carbon dioxide, and it's also going to be taking in water. And in the process of photosynthesis, so we're going to label the plant photosynthesis, we know that this plant is making oxygen, and it's also making glucose. And we know that this fish here is going to be going through cellular respiration because it's an animal, and it needs to get energy. And we know that we need to take in oxygen, and we need to take in glucose for cellular respiration. So you can see this plant, we can just draw an arrow because it's going to get it from the plant. So it's going to get the oxygen that the plant puts in the water, and it's going to eat the plant to get the glucose. So that's exactly. Then in the process of cellular respiration, it's going to breathe out carbon dioxide, and actually and you guys can see over here then the plant needs that, so I'm going to just draw an arrow. And we also know that if you breathe on your hand, you can actually breathe out, you can feel the water, and so the water is also going to go to that plant. So we can see this carbon cycling from glucose to carbon dioxide to glucose. It's a continual circle in that. So we can also show that on the back. So if I go here, and we're going to start carbon in the form of CO2 is in our air. And since it's air, it's not in a living thing. We know that's A means not, so abiotic. Carbon in the form of CO2 is absorbed into plants. The plant does photosynthesis. And the carbon is now in the form of glucose. Now that it is in a living thing, it is biotic. Okay, carbon in the form of glucose is eaten by the deer is consumed by the deer as it eats the plants. So as it eats the plants, that glucose that was in the plant is going to go into the deer. So this is also biotic. Carbon in the form of glucose is transformed by cellular respiration in the deer and is released back into the atmosphere as CO2. Since it's back in the atmosphere, this would be abiotic. So what you can see here is that we're constantly going from abiotic in the atmosphere, CO2, into a living thing, whether it be a plant or an animal, as glucose. goes through cellular respiration, we're releasing it back into the air. So it's this constant cycling of CO2 to glucose to CO2 to glucose. And that is a very simplified version of the carbon cycle.